What's up, Toilet Water Squad? I'm Big P and I'm streaming out a super simple way to turn luxurious restaurant level mac and cheese into pretty much a pantry meal you can cook on the stovetop. Once you understand this method, you could keep it simple or freestyle basically any mac and cheese you want. I'm going to start with the simplest version and then show you some upgrades, some different cheese blends, how to build your own cheese blends, and how to reheat it so that it's just as good the next day. So here's the super simple version. A can of evaporated milk, a box of pasta, and sodium citrate. These are all things that last a long time in your pantry. The only other thing you need is cheese, and if you're anything like me, you've got cheese. You know you have cheese. You want to pour your evaporated milk into some sort of pot, and then fill that can with water and dump it in, and then do that again. So fill up with 2 cans of water, then add your sodium citrate, bring it up to a simmer, add your pasta, and cook until al dente, which should be about the same timing as what it says on the box. Just start checking it a little bit early because we're not going to be draining the liquid out of this. You know how they say pasta water is the secret ingredient to making a creamy sauce? Well, we're going to leave 100% of the pasta water in this. The level of the liquid's going to get lower, so make sure to stir so that all of the pasta gets cooked evenly. Then turn the heat down and stir in your cheese a handful at a time until it's smooth and glossy. If it looks a little loose at first, don't worry, it thickens as it cools. I just chopped up my cheese to show that you can do it that way if you don't want to use a cheese grater. You could also probably just tear up the cheese. I'm not going to tell you can't use pre-shredded cheese, but getting it from the block is always best, and you have way more choices on what cheese you can use. But back to the sodium citrate for a minute. This is what keeps the sauce smooth. It's an emulsifier, which basically means it keeps the fat and water from separating so the cheese melts into a creamy sauce instead of getting greasy or clumpy. If you don't want to buy sodium citrate, you can use American cheese, either from the deli or Kraft Singles or something like that. Those cheeses already contain emulsifying salts, including sodium citrate, which is why they melt so smoothly. So what you can do is just melt in like 4 slices or around 75 to 100 grams of American cheese first, and then add your other cheeses, and they will melt smoothly too. I will say though that I did get a 400 gram bag of sodium citrate for around 10 bucks, and this recipe only calls for 10 grams. That means you can make this around 40 times, and each batch is at least 4 servings, so that's like 160 servings of mac and cheese, and you can flavor it however you want. You can use it for queso, mac and cheese, or anything where you want a smooth cheese sauce. If you want a good rule of thumb for using sodium citrate, you want to use around 2 to 3% of your liquid's weight. So in this we have about 1,000 grams of liquid, but that gets reduced down by at least half, either from evaporation or from being absorbed by the pasta. So we're going to be left with less than 500 grams of liquid, and 2% of 500 is 10 grams. That's pretty much it for the base recipe, so now I'm going to get into some plus-ups. I added 6 strips of cooked bacon in this that I just chopped up. You could add pretty much like any meat to this, like chicken or sausage or I don't know, pretty much anything. You could do those crab legs or shrimp from the store that are pre-cooked and peeled. But some other things I added to this were a little bit of butter, some Dijon mustard, some cayenne pepper, some lemon juice, and some black pepper. Adding acid to your food is kind of like salt for the other side of your brain. I'm not really sure how better to describe it. But basically, if your food tastes flat and you've added enough salt, you probably need to add acid. And mac and cheese is super rich, so acid is really going to help cut through that. Even if you don't believe me, please just try it. Add the lemon juice. If you don't have lemons, add vinegar. You'll be amazed by the difference it makes, for real. One other thing I did to plus this up was I made a crispy cheese topping. Basically, I just cooked cheese in a pan for a few minutes until it got all broken and bubbly, and it cooled down and then got crispy, and I put those little shards, I broke it into shards and then put those on top of the mac and cheese. You want to use something like Parmesan or cheddar or Asiago for that. But some other things that I add when plating were some green onions, some microplaned Parmesan, drizzle of olive oil, and a little bit of black pepper and some Cajun seasoning. It was like a Cajun seasoning blend. I added that just because I was having this with some chicken and broccoli that I had put the Cajun seasoning on. And also one of the cheeses I used was like a Cajun cheddar cheese or something. So I was just trying to tie it all together. But I guess I'll talk about the cheese blends now. The most simple option is just go 100% cheddar, or, you know, mostly cheddar and a little bit of American. But I'll put up some examples of other cheeses on the screen, and I'll break them into 3 categories. And I'll provide a little bit of a guideline on how much to use, just as like some safety rails. Category 1 is melty / creamy. You want most of the cheese to be this, so about 50% to 70%. These are cheeses that have like a smooth texture and a mild mild flavor, you don't have to just use one of these. You can use a combination. So for example, in mine, I used both Muenster and Fontina, and those added up to about 70% of my cheeses. Category 2 is a cheese you're going to use to boost flavor, and you want 20 to 40% of your cheese to be a flavor cheese. This is just like any sharper cheese that's like a more distinct flavor. That Cajun cheddar cheese that I was talking about earlier is what I used for this. And then the last category is just like an emulsifier, which is optional. And the only example I have for that is American cheese. But then also here's just some examples of some blends that you could try. The one that I made in this video is in the top right. So pick something that sounds good to you or try something new, and let me know what you think about it in the comments. But there was one more thing I promised to do at the beginning of this video, which was show you how to reheat this. One of the great things about this method is that it reheats great. I have a stovetop method and a microwave method. And honestly, they both kind of worked the same. They both worked great. So pick whichever one you want. I'm gonna start with the stovetop one. I just put a little tiny bit of water in a saucepan. I actually put too much water in, I think, and it was too liquidy, so put even less water than this. And then just gently heat it and add your mac and cheese a little bit at a time and stir it in. And as the cheese warms up, it'll emulsify that water back into the sauce and it'll just become nice and loose again. And then once everything's all nice and warm, it's pretty much back to how it was when you first finished cooking it. You can add all the toppings again and have a nice meal, or you could just dig in right away and still have a nice meal. I said to add water. You can add water or milk, whichever you want. I just added water because I figured that would be easier, and I was just showing you that it would still be good if you did the easier version. But if you use the milk, just be extra careful not to overheat it so that you don't scorch the milk. The other method is basically the same, but in the microwave. Just put a little tiny bit of water or milk in a bowl, and then put your mac and cheese on the top of that. Put it in the microwave I put it in for 30 seconds, stirred it, and then I put it back in for about a minute, and I covered it with a paper towel both times. For me, that was enough time to get it all melted and warmed up, but if you need more time, just keep putting it back in for 30 seconds to like a minute at a time, and then stir it up. And you can put all the toppings on it again if you want, or just eat it like that. If yours is looking loose when you take it out of the refrigerator, you probably don't even need to add the water when reheating it, so maybe just don't even add the water. I think that might be it, Toilet Water Squad. If you made it this far, you gotta subscribe. Those are just the rules. But really, if you do make this, let me know. Thanks for checking it out.